Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. We're going to try to be unstoppable today as much as we can. Our guest is Stephanie O'Brien. O'Brien, good Swedish name, Stephanie. I couldn't resist. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's a pleasure to have all of you listening. Stephanie has been involved in coaching and connecting coaches and clients for 13 years now. My gosh, a long time. And we're going to learn all about that. And I know that Stephanie's got a lot of words of wisdom to talk about. So without further ado, as it were, let's get into all of this. So Stephanie, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm looking forward to this.
And as I told Stephanie earlier, the rule of the podcast is you got to have fun. So, we do our best. But anyway, let's start out with kind of the early Stephanie growing up and all that, and, just to learn a little bit about you if we can.
Sure. A big part of the reason why I later came to have a focus on helping coaches connect with people was because for me, connecting with people was really difficult when I was young. I'd be the kid who on Saturday morning, I'd get on the phone, I'd call each of my friends one by one, only to be told that they didn't want to hang out. And I was seldom the one who got a call in return. So I had a really hard time connecting with people. Admittedly, I could be a bit clingy and boring, so I have to recognize my own faults and where I had to grow from there. But at the time, I didn't really know how to fix that. So yeah, I had a hard time connecting with people. Eventually, I started connecting with people through writing. I was a pretty prolific novelist. I finished my first novel when I was 12 years old. Terrible novel. Mom told me, Steph, don't delete it. And I tell her, no, it's so bad. I'll never want to see it again. Mother knew best. I shouldn't have deleted it. But I went on to write 14 novels, 4 of which were good enough by adult me standards to self-publish. And while I was doing all this writing, I started connecting with other writers, talking with them about their stories. I got very good at building relationships and asking the right questions to keep the conversation going. I just kind of learned how to connect with people through trial and error, though I've since worked with some mentors to get better at it still. So now I use that experience, the writing experience, the ability to phrase things in a way that's easy to understand and connect with, that experience with building relationships. I help coaches to connect with more of their ideal clients now.
So have you always been in Manitoba?
Yeah, I've always lived in Manitoba. Sometimes vacationed or traveled outside it, but always lived here.
Oh, yeah. A lot of snow in the winter?
Oh, yeah. It's been less severe lately. It's in the last few years, we've had more 30-degree days in summer, fewer 40-degree below days in winter. Wow. But it still can get pretty cold.
Isn't that crazy? And of course, some people say there's no such thing as climate change. So what do you do?
you point out the pictures of me trick-or-treating as a kid versus me at Halloween this year. I went from trick-or-treating in blizzards to walking on grass in November 1. There's a difference.
Yeah. Well, so you went to school. Did you go to university or any of that?
I was actually homeschooled, and I went to Athabasca University online, but I didn't take a full formal university education. Instead, I took courses from various coaches and business owners to learn how to run an online business. Wow. Here, if you're going to do a secondary education, you may as well learn from someone who's doing what you want to do and can teach you how to do it.
Well, and as long as that works for you, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, so, you've got to choose your education based on what you're trying to learn and what you're trying to accomplish. I don't like the cookie cutter model, or you got to get a college education because learn what's relevant.
Well, I think there's value in college or university.
Oh, absolutely.
And I went to the university, and I think for me probably it was the best thing to do because back in 68 to 76 when I was at the University of California at Irvine, there weren't a lot of alternatives other than college for getting access to material. Accessible stuff wasn't there. In fact, majoring in physics, my books had to be transcribed into Braille. And that was a challenge because professors didn't always want to provide information about what books they were going to use until as late in the process as they could, just in case a new book came out. And that didn't work for me. And so one of the things that I learned was how to work with professors and, when necessary, use higher authorities than professors at the university to get them to provide what needed to be done. So that was useful, but the material wasn't accessible without me making a major effort. So Probably college would have been anyway for me the way to do it, but obviously what you did worked for you, and
Yeah,
so you know,
I figure it's important to just to figure out what you want to do with your life, figure out what information or courses you need on that, and then pick the source that is most appropriate to provide it. It's There's no one size fits all.
no, and I agree. What do you do with people who say, "I don't know what I want to do with my life"?
Those generally don't tend to be our target audience, but I can help them in a few ways. I can give them a few questions that they can answer. They can look at what is something that they really love to talk about, can't get enough of talking about. So they could study this forever. Is this something that they could, an area where they can help get results for people? Let's say they are really into relationships. They're fascinated by human relationships. Can they help people to communicate better? Can they help people to find better, healthier partners? Can they help them to avoid common conflicts with other people? Or what's a problem that they've solved for themselves, that they've healed in their own life? Maybe they had a really rough cancer journey and found out what went wrong, what went right, what could have gone right more to make it easier for them. I know one person who she got through breast cancer and now teaches other people how to navigate that journey a lot more smoothly than what she experienced.
Yeah.
So yeah, I encourage people to look at their lives, look at what you'd do for free if you had the option, if money wasn't an object, what fascinates you, what you're passionate about, and just see, is there a way you can use that to make other people's lives better?
Well, and that makes a lot of sense. And we all should do a whole lot more introspection and analyze what we do, and even ask ourselves why we do it, because we tend to just move ahead and do stuff and we don't think about it. And the other part of what happens as a result of that is that we try to control everything that we do. We don't think about what we're doing. And we're a lot more afraid than we should be and than we need to be if we would only take the time to really be introspective and learn what is it that really is going on. Why do I feel this way? And as you're pointing out, what can I do about it? But if we really take the time to analyze, then we figure out somewhere along the line, you don't need to worry about what you can't control. Just focus on the things that you can, and your life is a whole lot better anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah. That whole give me the strength to control it, or strength to change what I can, the grace to accept what I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is that one of the things that I talk about a lot is the mind's a muscle, and you need to develop it, whoever you are. Um, and the best way to do that is to think about what you do. I've learned that I'm not my own worst critic, I'm my own best teacher, and that's the way it should be. But I have to be open to learning and letting me and my inner voice teach. But if I do that, then I'm oftentimes, as I think back on it, very amazed at what I suddenly discovered that I didn't know before because I wouldn't take the time to think about it and study it.
Yeah, we can get so busy, so caught up in our day to day lives, so ingrained in our routine. Sometimes it can be challenging to rattle ourselves out of that, and sometimes we need another set of eyes or someone asking the right questions.
Yeah, and we need to take that time. So for you, you studied, you worked with people, and so you what kind of jobs did you have early in your job world, or did you always coach?
My first jobs, I was actually a waitress for a restaurant my mom owned along with a couple other people. They were going to run the restaurant along with us. They were going to be the main ones owning the restaurant, and then they just kind of ditched us and left us with a restaurant we didn't know what to do with. So I was a waitress there for a bit before we sold the building and moved on. Then we tried owning rental properties for a bit, and honestly, no, never again. We were not cut out for that. It was
Oh, that
terrible.
is a scary thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. I can still like I'm fine with being responsible for me. I don't need to be responsible for me and all the tenants who call me during supper to mediate between their fights.
Yeah. There's only so many hours in a day, and people need to take responsibility for themselves. So I hear you. So what did you do after that?
It was after that that we started getting into coaching. I'd been writing novels for pretty much as long as I could write, and I was going with mom. She was becoming a coach. She was studying under Mary Morrissey, so I went with her to learn how to use my fiction writing skills for business. And I started studying under Brendan Normand and then Ted McGrath. And yeah, it was actually Brenda Norman who introduced me to the world of writing for marketing and knowing how to focus on the results that people care about instead of the process that they don't really care about, how to phrase things in terms of the actual experiences that they long for instead of just giving dry, vague descriptions. So she was kind
Yeah.
of my gateway into the world of marketing.
So you you really essentially came by the whole concept of coaching pretty naturally by just the evolution of what you did, which is pretty cool. How about your books though? Are any of them still available for people to get?
Yeah, I've got four novels on my website, stephanieobrienbooks.com, where I host my novels, my short stories, my comics, my art, basically all my creative stuff that isn't coaching. And I've also got one nonfiction book, 1 month program builder, up on my website. I had written another one to help people with their marketing message, but that one needs to be updated. I'm planning to update and republish it eventually, but it just hasn't been a top priority.
So have you published all of your own books, or have you worked at all with traditional publishers?
It's all been self-published. A
Okay.
lot of the traditional publishing route just seemed like too much of a pain for them, still expecting me to do most of the marketing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that has happened is that publishers tend to not do nearly the marketing that they used to, which is fine for those who really do know how to market, but there is also value in publishers doing a lot more to help than I think probably a lot of them do. But it's the way the world is going. We are so steeped in social media and everything now. People think that's the only way to market, and it's not.
Yeah, anytime someone says their way is the only way, I immediately get suspicious. Like they instantly lose credibility. There are so many
Yeah,
different ways to market yourself and grow a business. The important thing is finding the way that works for you.
yeah. Um, and ultimately, one of the tests of whether it works for you is whether you see results or not. But true, it is still there is not just one way to market or sell for that matter.
Yeah, and if you're not having fun doing it, it's kind of like your podcast. If you're not having fun doing it,
Don't do it.
especially because yeah, I found that if I try and commit to a marketing method that I just really hate doing, I will struggle every day to get it done. I'll wind up procrastinating. I won't do it as consistently as I should, and I won't get results. So yeah, when you're choosing your marketing method, you got to pick something that even if you're not totally ecstatic about it, you at least enjoy it enough that you can do it consistently.
Well, and you may discover later that you really do enjoy it, and that's part of it. We don't always necessarily know everything in our own minds the way we ought to, but if we keep looking and we keep trying things and we find something, well, this is working. I'm not a great fan of it, but 10 years from now you may discover that you learned a lot and you really love it.
Yeah, and you can always just experiment with it. Give it a 90-day shot. You don't want to just poke at it and then go, oh, it didn't
Right.
work instantly. But give it a good old college try. Give it a 90-day genuine try. And if you're really hating it, if it's not getting results, be willing to let it go. If it's getting results, if you're enjoying it, keep on going, work on refining it.
Well, and if you're getting results and you don't enjoy it, then it's probably worth exploring why don't you enjoy it?
Yeah,
That might be
absolutely.
very telling also.
And if it's something that can be outsourced, then you might want to look at outsourcing it,
Well,
depending
there's
on the
that.
nature of what it is.
Yeah, there is that. But if it's working, that in of itself is something right off the bat.
Yeah, you don't want to ditch what's working unless you've got something better to replace it.
That is always true. Well, so anyway, so you started studying, and eventually, when did you start your business and start coaching seriously?
So yeah, I was kind of half partly coaching, partly writing for people as early as 2013. That's where I got my start. And then just kind of gradually got more and more into coaching as opposed to writing for people. But of course, even the process of writing for people still involves a certain amount of coaching because you have to help them understand, okay, here's why I'm doing it this way. Here's what we need to communicate. Here's what you need to communicate as a follow up afterward. So there is a certain amount of coaching involved in that too. But it's been the last few years that I've shifted my focus more fully to helping people create their coaching programs as opposed to writing marketing materials for the programs they already have.
Now, you've written a number of fiction books, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. That I'm still trying to figure out how to write a fiction book.
For me, most of the time, it starts with me having a few ideas for scenes or relationships, etc., and then spending the rest of the time trying to justify their existence. Like, here are a few really great scenes, and now I need to figure out all the other plot points that lead to this moment. The books I've published so far, one of them is called Cat Girl Roommate. It takes the concept of a cat girl, except that instead of being the stereotypical sexy cat girl, she's a cat girl who actually acts like a cat and thinks like a cat. I've owned cats pretty much as long as I can remember, so I just took a whole bunch of their ridiculous shenanigans and put them into this one cat girl, like how she'll her roommate who's taking care of her, he'll make the same meal for both of them, but she doesn't want hers. She wants his. It's the exact same thing, but she's sure that his is better. That is
Mm.
such a cat thing to do.
Oh yeah.
Another, yeah, another is called a Heroic Lies. It's kind of a dark twist on the superhero genre where you've got this villain who keeps on kidnapping people, keeps on trying to fight the hero, except that there seems to be nothing in it for him. It kind of explores that whole why is the villain putting so much into the fighting the hero instead of making his own life better with his all his genius, and kind of
Yeah.
puts dark twists on it. Oh shoot, that's why.
Cute. Well, and speaking of cats, see who I have on the back of my desk chair here.
Yeah, I noticed him moving around. Got enough. I got one sitting in a chair right over there.
Well, Stitch usually isn't in with me, but our house is being cleaned, and so her bed is
Mm.
under attack as far as she's
Oh
concerned.
no.
So she came in here, which she usually does, and she'll just stay up on the chair. She's fine.
Yeah, my cats hate laundry day. Sometimes I finish, laundering the sheets and making the bed. Okay, Brandy, your bed is ready.
Yeah. Well, Stitch copes pretty well. And then there's my guide dog Alamo, who's down on the floor. You can't see him, but he's down there and quite content. But Stitch seems to be pretty well. She moves around a little bit, but she's planted herself on the back of the chair. And I didn't even think about it when I bought this desk chair to get something wide enough so that she could be on it, but it's worked out really well.
Nice.
And
Yeah, she seems very cozy and content.
she is. And for those who don't know, Stitch is my Maine Coon rescue cat. And we've had her
Oh,
now for
cool.
10 years, over 10 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
so since the bed is being made and washed and all that, then she's in here and she's fine. She'll get bored
Yeah,
eventually.
hey, as long as she isn't wandering around screaming as mine sometimes does.
Yeah, yeah, that's the big issue. Well, so you got into this whole business of coaching, and how did you start or working with, or how did you decide to start working with other coaches and coaching them in terms of dealing with clients and so on?
Well, while I was accompanying my mom to all these training events, I just started falling in love with coaches and coaching. I saw all these amazing people who were trying to be their best selves, live their best lives, break free from their old patterns and beliefs and ways of being instead of just being ruled by them their whole lives, and trying to help others to do the same. I just fell in love with it, of the idea of the ripple effect I could make by helping these people. I also became a client of some coaches, and I found it really changed my life in a lot of ways, like helping me to overcome the emotional difficulties from that childhood I described, where people didn't want to be around me, where I couldn't make friends. Yeah, seeing the change it made in myself, I wanted to help more people to experience those transformations, and I wanted to help the amazing coaches who were making such a change to have more success and joy in their own lives too. But
Yeah.
as I was interacting with them, I found that I think they were in some ways kind of too educated for their own good, because they'd say stuff like, "I help you shift your paradigms," and I think I might have mentioned that earlier. But yeah, they didn't realize that these things that had so much meaning for them wouldn't have the same meaning for someone who didn't have their training. So they hear shift your paradigms and they can instantly mentally connect it with a result, whereas a layperson hears that they can kind of speculate about the result, but they don't immediately look at that and say, yes, that's the exact change I need in my life. So I was kind of the universal translator from Star Trek, helping them translate their
Yeah.
coach speak jargon into layperson's terms and into the terms of, here's what the people actually want.
If you were to define it, what would you say is the definition of a coach? What is a coach?
Um, I'd say it's somebody who works doesn't just put a training program for someone to go through on their own pace. It actually works directly with the person, helping that person find the answers that they need, helping them to work through their own minds, their own circumstances, their own desires, and helps them ask the right questions is someone who helps them to figure out their own life or some specific aspect of their own life. They don't just give education, they also receive what the client has to say and help the clients to work through it and understand it.
Yeah, I once heard a definition. The difference between a coach and a therapist mainly is that a therapist helps you find the answers, but the therapist knows the answers and can give you the answers. But a coach guides you because you're the one who really has to discover the answers and figure out what it is that you need to deal with. So the coach will guide you and help you discover, but you have to be the one to do it. The coach doesn't necessarily know nor provide the answers.
Yeah, and when I'm working with coaches, that's definitely the case where, they're the subject matter expert on whatever they're trying to teach on. I'm just the person who knows which questions to ask to draw out their expertise and help them to share it in a more effective way and to come up with it or to draw it out of hiding in a more efficient way instead of spending weeks trying to figure out what to say.
Yeah. So, in general, you've talked about it a little bit, but what are some of the challenges that you first saw in dealing with coaches when you first started?
There was the one I mentioned where they didn't really know how to explain their services in a way that resonated with people. They talked about the process they took them through, or the amount of content they were going to give them, or the amount of time they were going to spend with the person. Thing is, you're asking for a bunch of a person's time. That's not a selling point. That's a chore. You're going to spend 5 hours of your weekend on this. That's an anti-selling point. So I helped them one of those challenges then was not knowing what it is that their clients really want and addressing that. Another is time. Time is a huge issue, as in the business world in general. So, a lot of people struggle to find the time to create their coaching programs, or what time they have, they don't use it efficiently because they don't have a system for quickly and easily drawing out all that content and organizing it. Another is money. A lot of coaches are having trouble finding the right clients, connecting with them, conveying the value of their products and services to them so that they actually get those clients and get the money. So those I find are three of the big challenges that coaches run into.
Yeah, I can say, having observed a lot about it, that a lot of people seriously undervalue or don't recognize the value that they bring. And so as a result, when they're creating courses or coaching or whatever, they undersell and don't charge what they're necessarily really worth. And there are reasons to avoid that and really charge what you're worth. But you also have to learn how to do that and learn how to figure that out. But people do tend to sell themselves short way too often.
When you're really immersed in your own expertise, it can be so easy to start feeling like what you know is common knowledge, when in reality, it's stuff that a lot of people don't know. And even if they know some of the surface stuff, they don't know the same kind of depth as you. They don't know it in the same kind of depth as you do. I've actually got exercises I take my clients through so they can kind of remind themselves of the depth of their own expertise and how much they know that their clients don't know. I'd be happy to share that if you want.
Sure.
Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, I hope you've got something to write this down and record this. So I'm going to walk you through this exercise. Not only does it help you to really boost your confidence in your own expertise, it'll also help you come up with a ton of content for your coaching programs, your training programs, your content marketing, podcasts, newsletters, social media posts. So yeah, definitely be ready to take notes on this. So your first step is to figure out what are the things that you can help people with. Just write it down in broad categories. Maybe you could say, I help them with marketing, with JVs, with getting referrals. So you put those broad categories, kind of break them down by the results. What are the results that you can help people get? Then pick one of those results. I like to use the example of a relationship coach who helps single men to meet and marry the woman of their dreams. So the result is that this person has a loving marriage with the woman of his dreams, but right now he's single and lonely and doesn't know how to approach women. So then for step 2, what you do is you write down the steps that you take your clients through, preferably in chronological order. Now, I know not everyone can do chronological order because some processes just don't happen in a specific timeline or a specific sequence. But if you can do it in chronological order, it's best to do so. So the steps that you'd write down, say you're this coach, you could write down helping him to figure out what kind of woman he wants to meet, helping him to figure out where these types of women might hang out, how to approach her, how to have a conversation, how to get a first date, how to see if how to conduct himself on that first date and see if she's the kind of person he wants to keep dating, how to get a second date if he wants, and so forth. So once you've written down all these steps in chronological order, pick one of those steps and break it down further. This is where you really start to see the depth of the expertise that you have. So step one was figure out what kind of woman he wants to meet. So you could ask questions like, what kinds of experiences do you want to have with your partner? And what kind of person would want to have those experiences with you? What kind of experiences do you not want to have? And what kind of person would give you those bad experiences? What kind of positive experiences have you had in the past that you want more of? If you need help to figure out what you want. Do you want a partner who wants to be a homemaker or a career woman or a business owner? Do you want a partner who wants to have kids with you or who would rather stay childless? To give them really specific questions that they can ask themselves to better understand, what they want and to better understand how they can go about this. And if you want to give them instructions for how to do something, make those instructions so specific that if an alien who had never even heard of your subject of expertise before were to read the instructions, the alien would know exactly how to do it. You don't be like those software developers who go, okay, just click on this tab, and this tab. Okay, but how do I get to that tab in the first place? Don't assume that your clients know how to do the first few steps. Some of them will, some of them won't. You don't want to leave that second category behind. And you can also look at, hey, what are the best practices they can use while doing this? What are some common mistakes? What are some examples you can give them of people actually doing this? And by going through this exercise, you can really get a clear view of just how much depth and detail you know about every single step in this entire process. And when you really break it down, every single step that goes into the process has so much nuance, so much detail, so many things that you could teach them, so many nuggets of wisdom you probably have that you might have even forgotten because it's become so second nature. Yeah, I encourage you to do that exercise and remind yourself what an expert you are and come up with a huge amount of content at the same time.
Right. And then what happens?
So what happens next, of course, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If once you've done this exercise, if you're trying to create a coaching program, you still need to figure out how you're going to deliver it, whether it's in group coaching calls, one-on-one, a hybrid, or if you want to make a training program as opposed to a coaching program. You need to figure out how to price it, what kind of hosting software you want to use to deliver it. Those are some of the steps that come after. And of course, you need to figure out how to sell it, how to market it in a way that works for you.
Well, so coaches are human like everyone else, at least that's the theory. And so you observed coaches having challenges, you observed people not necessarily dealing with discovering the things that they should discover in order to be able to coach or to progress. How do you find, or how do they overcome those challenges? What do you do to help them overcome those challenges?
It kind of depends what the situation is that's preventing them from progressing. So my first step would be, of course, to talk with them and figure out, okay, what's stopping you from progressing? Is it that you feel you don't know enough to create a coaching program? In that case, let's see how we can draw out more information from you. Is it that you have too much information and you don't know which information to put in each offer because you don't want to try and shove it all in the same offer? It's just going to get cluttered and people will feel ripped off because they're paying for information they don't need. So I might help them figure out, okay, how many offers do you want to make? What information goes into each offer? If they're having trouble with time, in my program Creation Made Easy course, the first thing I do with people is actually look at their schedule and figure out, okay, what are your priorities? What needs to be in your schedule? What can be paired out? Where can we make time to actually create your coaching program? So those are some examples of how I help people with some common challenges.
Do you find a lot of resistance? People don't want to or think they don't want to overcome the challenges because they don't really exist? Do you see a lot of that kind of challenge, and that people just resist because they're really not thinking in, as I put it, being introspective?
I'd say one of the biggest challenges I find people run into that stops them from working with me is they want to do it on their own. And some people can do it on their own, but others wind up working on it for weeks on end. They say, oh yeah, I'm working on figuring out this content. Then weeks later, I follow up, hey, how are you doing? I'm still working on it. we could have had it done in 60 to 90 minutes. So just one call with me, 60 to 90 minutes, and that could have been done.
Yeah. Well, that's your expertise
Yeah.
that brings that. And the result is that again, people aren't thinking it through, and so the result is that they continue to go in circles and not necessarily move to where they ought to be as quickly as they should. But at the same time, there's only so much you can do because you can't force people to listen.
Yeah, all I can do is, as with any business owner, work on getting better and better at communicating my value and helping people see why they're better off working with me.
Well, that's an interesting point. It's as much a learning experience for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you're finding that people aren't really responding to your messaging, you need to look at your messaging or the way you're presenting it and see, okay, where can this be improved? And even if your messaging has been working, things can shift, trends can shift, people can get overloaded on a certain type of messaging. So you need to be prepared to adapt and to listen to people and see how their needs and their preferences are evolving.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point that I like a lot, and that is that things may be working. You may be doing something well. The question is, can you do it better? And I think that's a question that we should always be asking ourselves. Can I even improve what I'm doing? That takes humility to be able to ask that question, but it is still true. It's something that we should do, and that is really look at, am I doing this the best way I can? Can I improve it? And of course, that is something that you as a coach brings to it as well, because sometimes if they consult with you, they can find out that you may approve of what they're doing, you may like what they're doing, but you can come up with other solutions that are even better. I love the whole idea of collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see nearly as much of it as we should. And I think way too often, as you point out, people just want to do things on their own, but none of us are really an island.
Yeah, I've had lots of mentors who helped me to get where I am, and I'm still learning from other people as I go.
It gets to be a real challenge. And again, you can't force people to do things that never is going to work. So you can't necessarily do that.
And I hate that sales tactic where you try and force or bully someone into it. Run to the back of the room and buy my stuff, or else you're going to be a failure in business forever. I am so over
Yeah.
that. And if someone tries to pressure me into it, that tells me that they care more about their agenda than they care about me, and that they don't respect my boundaries. And at that point, their odds of making a sale pretty much hit the floor and start digging.
Yeah. I learned a long time ago that people who really sell and do it well recognize that what they truly are educators or counselors. You don't force people to do things. You need to really look at what a person needs and wants. And if you've got something to help them, then you bring that into the conversation. But you don't, and you shouldn't force people. I've had so many situations where I sold a product, and the product that I should say I wanted to sell a product, but my product wouldn't necessarily do what the customer really needed. There were issues, whatever they are. So what am I to do? I could try to just continue to push our product on them, but I know that in the end, that's going to backfire. It's not going to work. People are then going to hate me or resent me, and they're never going to want to do business with me. So it's important to not push something that doesn't work. But I also took it a step further more than once, which is to say, here's what will work, even though my company doesn't happen to have it. And when you really develop that level of trust by being honest with someone and pointing out this is what really works, in the long run, that's going to earn you a whole lot more than you would have ever gotten any other way.
Absolutely. It can make you more of a go-to authority. I mean, people need something, they can come to you even if it's not what you offer. You may not be the provider, but you know the provider. And it helps to foster good relationships with other business owners if you have people that you know and trust and can refer to. I recently sought out a person who's an expert in grants. I noticed her on a networking event, and I'm not really looking for a grant myself. I don't have much interest in grants at the moment, but I'd had a few people for some reason approach me and ask me, hey, can you help me get a grant? No, not remotely. And the first few
Yeah.
times I had nobody I could even refer to. I tried to find some people who I could refer to, but couldn't really find anyone appropriate. So I finally find this one. Oh, thank goodness you actually help people to find grants. Like these people wanted me to help them find a grant, never mind apply for it, find one in the first place. And I can't do that. Like I
Yeah.
could learn, but I don't want to. But then here's this person who specifically teaches people how to do it. So even though it wasn't my expertise or even something I needed, I sought her out just so I'd have that ability to refer people next time.
Well, and that's pretty important to be able to do. In my case, I'm thinking of a particular incident where I and a sales guy, one of my salespeople, who had set up an appointment to go see a customer, and they wanted his manager to come, which was me, and we went. And I'm unusual anyway. I mean, how often do you see a blind sales guy coming in holding a laptop projector and doing other things like that? And I actually did the presentation, and I also happen to be very technical. And so I asked a lot of questions and learned that our product wasn't going to do what these people needed. But by the time we were done with the whole presentation, I said, and you can probably see our product won't do what you need, and here's why. But then I did, and that's the first time I really did it. I took the next step and said, but here's a company, and here's what product really will do exactly what you need, and here's why. The result of that was that 2 weeks later, we got a call from the same company saying, we really took what you said to heart, and now we have another project. And because of everything you taught us, we know that what you have to offer is exactly what we need. Just tell us what it's going to cost, and we will order it today. We're not even going to put it out for
Awesome.
bid. And that's what trust is all about.
Absolutely.
And it's so exciting, but it's unfortunate that all too often people don't really look at the whole value of developing that trusting relationship. And that's got to be a volitional part of whatever you do in coaching or anything that we do in business or anything in our lives.
Yeah, I've had too many people try and pitch me without first building that trust. And even if it's a free thing, like a free webinar, there's no such thing as free.
Yeah.
Even a free webinar still costs time that I won't get back. So it's like, and so yeah, when someone just comes crashing into my inbox pitch first, that
Yeah.
tells me they care a lot more about their agenda than they do about me, especially if it's something that's clearly inapplicable. Like, no, I'm not going to join your group for single mothers. I've never had a kid. I mean, granted, I have this cat, and she is kind of a toddler, but I've never had the kind of kids you teach people to work with.
Yeah. So you've never had kids yet.
I'm not really planning to. I've already got cats.
Yeah. Have you gotten married?
No.
So you're not even in that, but you've got cats. Well, that's fine. Now,
Yeah,
when my wife and I got married, we decided that we were going to have kids. She was in a wheelchair her whole life, and she said that she was concerned it would have too much of a bad effect on our body. And what we decided to do, in addition to having dogs and cats, was to welcome nieces and nephews into the house because we could kick them out at the end of the day, and that worked out really well.
yeah, just hop them up on sugar and send them back.
Yeah,
At least that's
yeah,
what my grandparents did.
yeah. Well, worked for them, right?
Yep.
You seem to be surviving as a result.
Well, I didn't die.
Yeah, you're still coaching, so
Yep.
that's pretty cool. Well, let me ask you this, if I can. If someone is thinking about being a coach or selling their expertise, how do they determine, or how can you help them determine whether they're really qualified, or how can they
I,
decide that they're qualified?
I'd say the big thing is just to ask yourself, can I consistently get people results in this area? Now, obviously, that depends on the other person actually doing the work to get the results, but do you know how people can get results in a specific area in a repeatable, reliable way? This could be anything from relationships, improving your relationships, improving your health, improving your business. And it doesn't even have to be the whole journey. As long as you can help people take one significant step, you can help to improve their lives. Like, even if you can't help a person go from single to married, if you can say help married couples to stop having a specific type of argument. And for that matter, the more specific the problem you solve, the more people who have that problem are going to see, oh, that's exactly what I need. I don't need this generic relationship advice. I need relationship advice about this thing in particular. Like think about when you're, say, having a technical issue and you want to say, let's say that last night I was looking for how to widen the navigation bar in a WordPress site, and I see all these results for you. How to improve your navigation bar, how to make a navigation bar, how to change a navigation bar. No, I just want it wider. The only result I'm interested in clicking on is how to make it wider. It's the same thing with your customers. The more specific the result you can help them to get, the more the people looking for it are going to say, that's exactly what I need. So don't assume that you're disqualified if you can't help them with their entire journey. Just focus on what is one big result that I can help people get. If you know how to help them get that result, then you can help them to do that.
And it might also be that you do what you can do, but again, like you said about the lady who you've met who does grants, you can also get people in touch with other people who may be able to augment the successes or the results that you've already achieved, who may be able to do it better than you, so that you create essentially a teaming approach, even though each of you are working individually to help this individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do it kind of sequentially or concurrently. You could have someone offer a guest module in your coaching course. If you say help people with 9 steps out of 10, but this one step in the middle isn't your expertise, then you can have a guest expert come in and present in your course. Or if you help them with one step of the journey, but not the subsequent step, once they're done working with you, you can refer them to somebody else. Or if they're not ready to work with you, let's say you help people get on stages and present, but that only really works and can be monetized if the person has something worth selling to sell. So if you meet someone who wants to get on stages but has nothing worth selling, you could refer them back to me and I could get them ready for your services.
Right. It's a process, and again, a lot of people don't think they're capable of selling. They don't have the self-worth, or don't think they have the self-worth. And even the whole concept of this podcast, as I've said to many people, one of the main reasons that I love doing this is I get to show our audience members that they're more unstoppable than they think they are. And whenever I hear someone say, I learned this from this particular podcast and it really showed me how I can be better than I thought I was, that doesn't get better than that.
Oh, yeah. And even if you're just starting out can actually be kind of a superpower. Because as I was mentioning earlier in this interview, people can get so ingrained in their own expertise, it can become so second nature, they forget what other people don't know, which can result in overly broad or vague explanations. Like I've seen some mindset coaches saying stuff like, notice what stories you're telling telling yourself about this situation, or notice what limiting beliefs you have. Well, unless you're trained for that, you're not going to notice what's a story or what's a limiting belief versus what's just a fact. You don't know how to tell the difference. So that's an example of how a coach who's really steeped in their own expertise can totally forget that other people don't know how to do what they do. Whereas someone who's just starting out and who remembers very vividly what it's like not to know these things is less likely to make that mistake, more likely to be able to put themselves in the client's shoes, understand what the client does and does not know, and explain it in ways that a person who's new to this can understand. That's not to say a more seasoned coach can't do that, but there is that risk that they'll forget. So if you're just starting out, it can be just easier to relate to people who are also starting out and who are just a step behind you.
How do you teach people who are clearly experts in what they do, but who have forgotten that they weren't always experts and the people they're dealing with aren't experts? How do you teach them to go back and recognize that and remember those things that they've clearly forgotten that would make them so much better because they could then relate better to other people?
Mostly by asking questions. I kind of come at it from the standpoint as if I was their client. Okay, you just told me to do this, but how exactly do I do it? What are the exact steps I need to take? Or what questions can you ask me to help me to figure this out? Now, I basically act like I was their, like, we don't necessarily role play, but I do ask questions as if I was their client and didn't know how to do this thing.
Yeah. What do you do to help the person who's, say, fairly new to coaching and doesn't think that they're good enough? And how do you teach them to recognize that really maybe they are, or maybe they'll discover that they're really not? But how do you deal with that?
I take one of the things I do is I take them through that exercise I did earlier with you.
Right.
Write out the list of steps you take, break it down into sub steps. I also remind them of how being new can be a superpower. I also invite them to look at the results they've gotten for themselves and other people in the past. Have you healed this issue in yourself? Have you helped yourself to lose weight? Have you helped yourself to raise your kids better? Have you helped yourself to improve your health? Or have you helped other people? Is this something that other people come to you for advice, and have those other people gotten results from working with you? If you've never really gotten results for yourself or for other people, then you might want to make sure that you're able to actually get those results before try to teach people. Because if you don't know how to get the result, then you're really not qualified to coach. But if you can get the result and you know how you got the result and can replicate that process with other people, then you are ready to coach people. You are ready to help them to do what you know how to do.
One of the things that I have always done when I hire new salespeople, or even today when I'm talking to people who are fairly new in something that they've decided to explore, take at least a year and be a student. You should always be a student, but especially for the first year, play the student card. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate even to ask your customer questions, because the more you ask, the more you'll learn, because mostly people really want you to succeed and they want to succeed. And you're bringing something to the party. You may need to figure out what it is, but if you start by being a student, then you're really at least half the way there to figuring it all out.
Yeah, absolutely. And having a podcast can be good for that. You can interview people and get them to share all this free information, and they get exposure. You get free information. You get content to share with your audience. It's a great way to open doors.
Well, it's true. And, in the, it works both ways, because hopefully, for example, when I ask questions or we're talking about different subjects, hopefully you get something out of it too. And that's what makes it really fair.
Mm-hmm. That's important to have win-wins.
Yeah. Well, so clearly, we're dealing with a lot of different kinds of environments, and you're dealing with a lot of people. What about the person who doesn't think they have the expertise, and so they're reluctant to charge more or charge what they should be charging? I think I probably know the answer to this, but I'm going to, ask anyway. How do you help those people recognize? Let's assume that they do have the expertise, but they don't think they do.
One thing I can help them to do is look at the results they get and see just how valuable it is for their clients. So, for example, let's say you help somebody to sleep better at night and have more energy. Obviously, there are health benefits for that. You are less likely to have diseases. You're less likely to get into a car crash because you were groggy. You're probably going to have a better immune system. I like to break it down by the various categories of life. What are the benefits in their health? Of course, in their relationships, if they have more energy, if they're less cranky, if they're in a better mood, they'll be more pleasant to be around. People will want to be around them more. They'll probably have better relationships with their kids, their friends, their spouse, their boss, their clients, their coworkers. And so it's relationships, that's health. You can also look at time. How much time are they wasting on doing things the slow, hard way because they're groggy and brain foggy and unable to work well? Yeah, I encourage you to look at every different area of your life that the client's problem is affecting, and that would be affected positively by the solution you give. I think this will help remind you just how valuable your solution really is. And if you're not completely sure that you can help people to get results, look at the results you've gotten for yourself, look at the results you've gotten for others. If you do have a good track record of getting results, then that's the sign that you already have proof that you can. If you don't have a history of getting results, then you need to work on developing your skill set and learning systems that can get results consistently, or look at some other area of your life where you've already gotten results. But yeah, the important thing is that you need to be able to get results. And of course, you do have to also be realistic about, okay, you can teach people how to get these results. You can also do things with them to help maximize the chances that they actually do the things you're teaching them and thus get results. But you do have to recognize that some people are going to choose not to do the things and they will therefore not get the results. So as long as you know that if your system is followed, it will get results, you've done your part. The rest is also on them.
Yeah, and a lot of times they may not get results and who knows specifically why, but it's really important that they understand why they're not getting results. And maybe it is only, and I don't want to mitigate it, but it's only they don't have the confidence to ask, or they don't have the confidence to reach out to help somebody get the results, which is also part of what they need to work on.
Yeah, one thing a coach that I like did instead of just asking, "Do you?" Well, he did ask, "Do you have any questions?" But if the people he was coaching with didn't in this group call didn't have any questions, he'd ask them to give an update. What were you working on this week? What results were you trying to get? What results did you get? And this often resulted in him finding things to coach on that the person hadn't thought to ask. So yeah, it's important to check in with your clients to see what kind of results they're getting, what kind of results they're not getting. And if they're not getting results, then explore that with them. Why are you not getting results? What did you do the action steps? Okay, if so, did you do them right? Did you do them wrong? If they didn't do the action steps, why not? And how can we adjust your schedule so that you actually can fit them in? What kind of resistance is there against doing these action steps, and how can we clear that resistance? It's really important to stay in touch with your clients and to get consistent updates on what milestones they are or are not hitting and why they are not hitting them, and be prepared to address those underlying issues, because often while you're working on doing something, questions will come up that you didn't think you had earlier. You discover nuances to it that you didn't know about, or you'll meet mental resistance that you didn't realize you were going to have.
Part of it, though, is also the art of asking questions and the art of asking the right questions. I, for example, really don't like to ask yes or no questions, closed-ended questions, if you will, because you don't learn much that way. And so that was also one of the things that I did with the customer we mentioned earlier. I'll always ask open-ended questions because I really want to get not only the information that they have that I feel is important for me to have, but I also get to know them a lot better when I ask open-ended questions and get them to really give me a detailed response. I'll learn a lot about them as well, and I think that's extremely important.
Now that makes total sense.
Yeah, because it's so important to be able to ask, tell me more about this, or what is it that you find doesn't really work here, or why do you like that? And really get questions that will make people think. That also helps keep me alert when I keep thinking of questions. So it works both ways.
Yeah, I'd say the ability to ask the right questions is one of the most important things for a coach.
Yeah, and if you don't necessarily know the right question, again, asking some open-ended questions, and sometimes you might even want to say, what else is there that you want to tell me about this, or tell me more about this, so that you get people to offer information. And I've been in situations where I wasn't sure what to ask, but I can always ask something that will get people to offer more, that will help me think about, oh, I need to ask about this.
Yeah, and you could kind of write a list of the pieces of information that you need to know about your client. Like, say, going back to that relationship coach example, the pieces of things that you need to know in order to help someone find their ideal soulmate. Does this person want to have kids or not? Does this person want to have a stay-at-home spouse or a career spouse? It's
Sure.
look at what are the things that you need to know as the coach, and then that'll help you to know what to ask the client.
For sure. And that's an evolving list, or it should
Absolutely,
be.
and write down. And if you have your frequently asked questions, write those down.
Yeah, and be willing to add to it, and take away from it, depending on what works. What
Yeah.
about the other end of the spectrum, the person who is extremely passionate about so many things? How do you get them, or how do you help them focus so that they're not all over the map?
Well, one extremely important thing I found, both as a coach and as a client, is you want to focus on one result for each product. If you have multiple related results that all tie into the same thing, like say the results could be that you're a better communicator, you're more emotionally stable, and you meet and marry the partner of your dreams, those kind of all tie together into the single result. But to give you an example of someone doing it wrong, I was once the client of someone who was offering book publishing coaching. What I wanted at the time was to learn how to market fiction, because of course the usual nonfiction marketing stuff, here's the problem you solve, here's the solution and outcome you give, doesn't apply so much to novels. So I wanted to learn how to market novels.
Mm.
Well, the vast majority of this course, which was sold to me as a way to market novels, was about how to outsource the writing of and market nonfiction books. Totally inapplicable at the time. In
Yeah.
fact, the outsourcing of the writing is still inapplicable. So I didn't feel like I got more value. I felt ripped off. I felt like I should have paid a fraction of the price and received a fraction of the information instead of paying a bunch of money for stuff I didn't even want to know. So focus on a specific result for a specific type of person. And you can always make multiple different offers. You know, like chicken soup for the soul, you've got things for all sorts of different demographics. You can make different offers for different demographics, but focus each offer on solving a specific problem. That way people can just see, okay, that one is exactly applicable to me, instead of looking at that and going, a third of this is applicable to me, but the rest isn't. So I'm going to go find something where it's all applicable.
Yeah. And it is so unfortunate when you see some of that. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's really so sad when something gets misrepresented. I know in the books that I've written, I love collaboration. So I've written 3 nonfiction books, and in all 3 cases, I worked with someone else, and we both were contributors to the book. But it was ultimately really my subjects, as you pointing out. Somebody can't really be outsourced to do that. But by the same token, bringing someone else into it actually, in all 3 cases, enhanced the book a lot. They had expertise that I didn't have, or they brought a different perspective. And I think that that always made things stronger.
Yeah, it's great that you found those good collaboration partners.
Yeah, and it worked out really well. So I can't complain about that a whole lot. It was one of those wonderful blessings. And I don't know if that would, for me, work with fiction, but I don't know. Well, James Patterson seems to write a lot of books with collaboration or whatever. So who knows? But it's one of those things to investigate. Well, let's get to the really serious question of the day. How many cats do you have?
At the moment, 2, though at our peak we had 6.
Oh gosh. We used to have 2 cats. They were sisters, and then one
Oh,
passed
cool.
away. One died at the age of
Oh,
9 of cancer, and then the other one lived to be over 18.
oh,
But it was fun to have 2 sisters. Oh, they were characters.
oh, I bet they have so much personality and so such different personalities. You know, one of mine is really brash and rebellious and headstrong, and the other is such a delicate little princess.
Well, when we had the 2, there were Callie and Smudge. Smudge was a little gray smudge. And one day, and Karen saw this happening, Smudge was in the closet, and Callie was looking for her. And Smudge figured that out and was quiet. Callie comes into the room and is meowing, and Smudge isn't responding. And I think Callie even looked in the closet but didn't see Smudge because Smudge was hiding. Callie walks away. Smudge makes a noise, and Callie comes back and looks a little bit more. This went on for about 5 minutes, and suddenly Callie goes into the closet, and Smudge just jumped on her and bombed her. It was so funny. Clearly, it was a planned attack.
Well, they are ambush predators.
Yeah, they are. Well, is there anything else that you would like to offer suggestions to people, maybe who are thinking of coaching, or who may be looking for a coach? Some ideas of things that people ought to do to help that process along.
I've actually got a gift if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a free downloadable PDF called How to Pick a Coaching Topic That Sells. It basically walks you through the process of exploring what you might have to offer as a coach, you know, what topics you can teach on, and then actually making connections with the people who might be interested in that kind of coaching, building relationships with them in a way that's organic and genuine and creates actual connections instead of just being that weirdo who comes pitch first into their inbox. And it helps you to ask the right questions to learn what are the problems they're facing, what do they need to overcome those problems, what are the outcomes that they want, and what do they need to achieve that. Why is it important for them to do this soon? Why do they want to work with you? So it helps you to really, you know, build those relationships and get the information you need to create a coaching program that's tailored to the needs that your ideal clients actually have. The link for that will be included in the show notes.
How do people get that?
Yes, I believe we can put the link for it in the show notes, right? The description
Yeah.
of the video or the. Okay, so yeah, I'll send you that link and we'll have it in the show notes.
Great. That would be
Want to
great.
make it.
And I hope people will take advantage of it and use it, and that they will also decide that they want to take advantage of your expertise and deal with some of your coaching endeavors. How do people reach out to you?
Well, my email is stephanie@coachclientconnection.com. And if you go to my website, www.coachclientconnection.com, if you go to the contact page, you can see how to email me, how to book a call via my Calendly, and links to my social media. So you can just pick the method that works best for you.
Cool. Well, I hope people will do that. I hope people will recognize the value that you bring and that they will reach out to you. I assume you coach all over the world, essentially, virtually, probably.
Yeah, as long as we both speak English, so I can coach you. Both speak English and have an internet connection. Very important.
Yeah, probably both of those are valuable. So you don't speak any other languages besides English and cat?
I know a little bit of Japanese, but little enough that trying to have a conversation would be
Yeah,
like trying to run a restaurant with just a few ingredients. If I'm
me
very
too.
lucky, the dish being ordered only takes the few ingredients I have. More likely, yeah, I've got like half the ingredients or less.
Yeah, I took a year of Japanese in college, so I feel I'm probably somewhat the same way. But that's okay. Well, I want to thank you for being here, and I also want to thank all of you for listening today and or watching. I just learned that somebody's throwing around a statistic that 40% of all people like to watch podcasts, and so that's why we're up on YouTube. I don't know about that statistic, but it is growing because people like to watch things. That's okay. I'm always tolerant and loving of my sighted friends, so I won't watch it, but they do, and that's okay. Anyway, we want to thank you all for being here and for participating as an audience with us. Love to hear what you think, and I know that Stephanie would also like to hear what you have to say. So please reach out to her, and you can reach out to me by emailing me at Michael Michaelhi at accessibe.com, or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. Michael Hingson is MichaelHingson.com/podcast. Love to get a 5-star rating from you. I really appreciate you doing that. We value very much the things that you say, and we hope that you like us well enough to give us 5-star ratings. Also, for all of you, and Stephanie, you as well, if any of you know of other people who ought to be guests on our podcast, love to hear about them from you. Introduce us. We're always looking for more people to help us all establish a better unstoppable mindset. So again, Stephanie, for you, really glad that you were here. Really appreciate it. And thank you for your time and for being here with us.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. For those of you watching this, I'd love to hear from you soon. Hope you all have a wonderful day.